In this Photoshop video, we're going to have a look at how to use adjustment layers in Photoshop to change and control the colors in our images. Now, this is my starting image here, so you can see I've used a series of adjustments to change the color of the car, and this is really simple. So we can begin here, if we go back to our starting image, by bringing up our layers panel, so we can go to window layers to access that, and we can click the create adjustment layer icon here at the bottom of the layers panel to access our list of adjustment layers. So let's start off by going for a simple one, Hue Saturation. Now, when we add an adjustment layer, we get the properties panel here, and you can see a layer appears above our original background layer here. Now, this is an adjustment layer, which means it affects all of the layers below it in the stack. But the great thing about adjustment layers is our layer remains independent and editable, so we can change it at any time. We can also adjust the opacity and use other layer features as well to control how it works. So with the Hue Saturation adjustment layer, we have a hue and a saturation slider here that we can use to change the colors in our image. So I can simply drag the hue one way or the other way to change the colors in the car like this. I can also use the saturation to control the intensity of those colors. Now, the problem with this is if you look at the little details like the lights in the car, you can see as well as changing the blues in the bodywork, I'm also affecting the other colors in the image. And there are a couple of things I could do to fix this. First of all, I could simply highlight the mask thumbnail on that layer. I can grab my brush tool, I can set my color to black, I can hit D and then X to make sure that's set to black, and then I could zoom in to different parts of the image and paint with black, and you can see that allows me to hide parts of that adjustment, revealing the original colors on the layer below. So I could just quickly paint over any of the areas that I don't want to be affected by that hue saturation adjustment layer. And if you look at my layer mask thumbnail here, you can see areas start to appear in black here, and these are the parts that I've painted over. So that's one way to control which areas are affected by our hue saturation adjustment layer. Now let's just turn off that layer, because I'm going to show you perhaps a slightly easier way. What we can do instead, I'm going to add another hue saturation adjustment layer here. Now this time, rather than adjusting the hue here, I'm going to grab the little hand tool here, and this gives us some on-image control. Now I can click and drag over colors in the image to target and adjust them. So you can see if I drag over the blues on the car now, notice in my properties panel how the blues have now been targeted here. So I can drag to adjust the saturation of those blues, so I can make them stronger or weaker, and notice that none of the other colors in the image are being affected. Now, as well as adjusting the saturation, I can also hold Command on a Mac, Control on Windows, and then drag to adjust the hue of those blues. So now you can see I'm targeting and adjusting those blue colors, but the headlights and the other colors in the image remain unaffected. So this is a great way to quickly change colors in your photos. Now you might begin to see some sort of breakup in the colors, and that's because I'm targeting the blues, but there's also cyan in that bodywork. So I might need to go into my different color channels here and target the cyans, and then tweak the color of the cyans as well as the blues to get me a different result. And we can of course use this adjustment layer in combination with other adjustments. So another good tool for changing colors is the selective color adjustment layer. Now this, similarly to the hue saturation adjustment, allows us to target these different color ranges within the image. So I could target the reds, and then I could control how much cyan, magenta and yellow is added or subtracted from those reds. So you can see it allows me to tweak the look of my reds. I could perhaps change it to a nice orange tone. Let's perhaps tweak the yellows and see how that affects our image. That makes the red slightly more intense, and we could adjust the blacks, which sort of controls the brightness of those colors. So this is another really useful tool for affecting the colors in your image, and it gives you a finer degree of control than hue saturation for tweaking colors rather than making those really obvious color shifts. that we get with hue saturation. Now I'm going to show you one final way to adjust the colors in your image, and to do this I'm just going to delete all of those adjustment layers to bring me back to my starting point. Now this involves changing our color mode, so I can go to image mode up here and switch to lab color. Now lab color is an interesting color mode because it allows us to separate the color from the detail in our image. So if I go to my adjustment layer icon now and choose curves, notice in the drop down at the top here we have lightness A and B, LAB, lab color. Now normally you'd see the RGB combined channel here along with red, green and blue channels, but in lab mode we can control lightness, which is the brightness, the detail in the image, independently of the A and B channels, which control all of the color information. So for example, we could go to our B channel here, and if I drag these points inwards, we can increase the intensity of the color. So this can be a really great way to boost saturation because we're targeting those colors without affecting the detail in the image. Similarly, we can go to the A channel and drag the points below the curve line inwards here. The golden rule here is to keep the curve line over the center of the grid here. So as long as we do that, then we're boosting the saturation without shifting the colors one way or another. Now we could also go into our color channels here and we could start to drag these points up or down. So if I drag this point downwards and this point upwards, you can see I can shift the colors in my image like this. And again, the golden rule is to keep the line over the center point in the grid there, so I can invert it to get some really interesting color shifts like this. And if we switch to our A channel, we can do the same thing here. So I could perhaps tweak the lines here again, keeping the center point over the center of the grid to get me some really interesting color shifts. And I can use this in combination with other adjustment layers here. Of course, I can go back to hue saturation, and then again I can use my on image tool. I can hold command or control and drag to target and change those colors. And as before, I might need to just highlight the mask on that layer, grab the brush tool and paint with black to hide the adjustment in areas that I don't want it affecting, like this. So there we go, that's how to change colors using adjustment layers and color modes in Photoshop.